If you want to master building apps with AI, you really need to get your head around using rules for AI. Specifically in Cursor, we call them cursor rules. In Windsurf, they're called memories. So these are basically rule books for getting AI to build good software. You've got an LLM that operates on its own. It's got a corpus, a huge amount of memory and training around every piece of software that was ever built across Stack Overflow and GitHub. But it might be out of date. There might be specific ways you like to build software. There might be great tips that are coming in from the community, and we want to incorporate that and send it with our message to the large language model so that it takes all that into account. And that's essentially what rules are. So in this video, I'm going to take you through how to use rules from start to finish with Cursor AI. I'm going to talk about the new rules system that was launched with Cursor, the rules folder, only in the last couple of days. I've gone through loads of Reddit posts and Cursor forums, and I've been experimenting with it myself for the last couple of days, trying to see what works and what doesn't. And I've got a great resource for you, which I shared during the course of the video, which is going to help you get started super fast in your AI development journey. All this and more, let's go. So Cursor AI basically allows you to influence how the AI operates and how it writes code. And we do this with either a global rule that works across everything you do in Cursor, or via project rules that are specific to each project that you create. So this is really powerful because it helps nudge the large language model in the right direction based on your experience and the collective experience of others. So it allows you to create components in a particular way, adhere to style guides, maybe always use Tailwind. You have installation preferences, reminding you to commit. These are all little rules that can be applied. And you can crowdsource rules from the rest of the community based on their experience. So they're actually really powerful. We've had rules for a while in the form of a .cursor rules file in Cursor, and in Windsurf, they're called memories. One cool feature of Windsurf is that it actually pays attention to remarks and changes that you make, and it updates that memory itself. So we're having a chat with Cursor about what it is that we want to build, and it's basically taking that into account alongside what our code base is, and then also what's in our rules file. And then it's going to package all that up and summarize it and then send it over to the LLM. And the LLM is going to send it all the way back here again. So all this gets implemented. So here we are in Cursor. You can download it from cursor.com. Lots of videos on this. And also you can go to my community, switchdimension.com, where you can learn a whole lot more. Okay, so if you go to the settings up here in Cursor settings, what we have here is, in general, we have rules for AI. So basically anything you apply or enter in here is going to happen for every single project that you work on. Every time you open a Cursor window, folder, instance, workspace, it is going to apply these same rules. So you don't want those to be specific to any particular languages. You want them to be very high level and general. And that's important. If you start putting in granular rules here, you might forget that they're being applied because it doesn't necessarily tell you. Okay, so I just have one rule in here for now to keep it simple, and it's commit messages. So basically, when you finish applying changes, the last line of the message should read, "Don't forget to commit," and give me a commit command as well. And then always prefix commit messages in the following way, no exceptions. And these are basically how I like to structure my commit messages. I find that the default way that Cursor does this is a little bit verbose. And because of the frequency that I like to commit when I'm working with AI, I just like them a little bit shorter and specific. So that's the other thing. When you are working with AI, you can't rely on the checkpoints features or the other ways of saving. You need to be committing constantly in case something goes wrong or the model decides to overwrite half your code base. You need to be constantly committing so you can step back in time. So if you don't know what committing is, it's just basically like a versioning system for saving all your files. We also have this little checkbox here which says include Cursor rules files. So that's this little file over here. To create it, all you do is you type in .cursor rules, and that's it. It's just basically it's a basic file that you can add in Markdown or JSON or anything you want, all the rules that you want to have applied. But the caveat is here, it's being deprecated. Deprecated means that it's in the next couple of versions of Cursor, it won't be used anymore, or the ability to use it will switch off in favor of this new Cursor rules folder system that we're going to talk about now in a second. So if we scroll down here, still in general, we have what we call project rules. So these are specific rules that help AI understand your code base and follow your project's conventions. So here's a couple of sample ones that I have here that I'm going to take you through. And this is how you basically add a new one here. These rules are constantly synced with your code base. But it is important to remember, and I've had this happen a few times, you need to know where syncing happens. So if you go to features here, you scroll down, what we have here is our Codebase indexing. So if you've made some changes to your rules or you've added new ones in, there's no harm in just hitting this little resync button here. What that will do is make sure that it's synced and up to date. This is happening constantly, but just to be sure, I've often been in scenarios where I've been working on a rules file, it wouldn't work for me, couldn't figure it out. It was just that Codebase hadn't been indexed. And when you click on that, you'll actually see any new files show up here that are being added to the index. So important to do that when you're working on files if you're having any errors. It's a little gotcha that I found. So back again to the rules and the specific project rules. So if I want to create a new rule, it's fairly self-explanatory. I just add a new rule and I click that here. So click that, it's going to give me the ability to enter a name. And I'm just going to give you an example of one I've set up earlier on. So this is a super simple example rule just for you to test out to see that it's working for you. What I've done is I've called it create component, and I believe the naming convention is important. You need to think about it from a human perspective and also from an AI perspective. The AI is going to be using some kind of retrieval augmented generation to read through and chunk everything that's in the index. And if it is relevant to the instruction that it's carrying out, it's going to pull that in. So context is probably a good thing here. So I've named this create component. And in the description, I've basically said, create new component, refactor a component, or update a component. I want this rule to be taken into account in that scenario. Is this the best way to do this? I'm not sure. These rules are brand new. There's no documentation on them. Cursor, you make a fantastic tool, but man, you're terrible at documentation. You need to sort that out. Cursor, come on. So anyway, this is my approach to it and what has worked for me. It's adding in create new component, refactor component, update component. And then over here, we have something called globs. So what this is it allows you to specify a particular file pattern. This essentially means in the source directory, then deeper in the app directory, and these are little wildcards or stars, they say all the folders in the app directory, and then deeper than that, it's all the files within those folders. You can have it here as .tsx or .py, depending on what files that you want to work on, watching those patterns. This has been kind of hit and miss for me as I've been testing it out. I'm looking forward to some more insight from Cursor on exactly how to go about using this. So what I'm saying here is prefix all component names with HAL 9000. So first of all, naming our component. You want to make the name as semantic and descriptive as possible. Think about a large language model who wants to know the context of when they use this. So in this case, anytime a component is created, I want this to be taken into account. And here in the description, what I have is basically I'm saying whenever something is created, refactored, or updated as a component, I want this to be taken into account. Not sure yet if this is the best practice, but this seems to be working really well for me after some testing. I'm sure we'll get more information on this as the week goes on. And what I've got for you is a live resource on the Switch Dimension website, which I'll update as I learn more. So even if you're watching this video 2 or 3 months into the future, I'll have kept that updated with all the up-to-date knowledge and hopefully some contributions from the community as well. So here then we have the bulk of our message that we're sending. So this is kind of what you would have placed in the rules file, and this is kind of like the header you would have put it in the rules file. So what we're saying here is prefix all component names with HAL 9000. I'm adding in some examples, and then I've got this little rule at the end here that says prefix the chat message response with rule, and then we're going to pull in the rule name up here so that the user knows that this rule is being applied. So I found actually in Composer and Chat, Cursor does a great job of telling you when the rule is being applied, but I like to know as a backup, and this is good for just knowing that things are being kept in context. Now I'm going to show you that working in a second, and I'm going to show you one other rule. When you create a new rule or add a new rule, they're going to appear over here in this folder structure right up here, and it's called .cursor/rules, and it replaces the .cursor rules. So if we open this, we can see different rules here that I've created. So if we take a look, we have the install shadcn. So essentially I have this bugbear where every time I'm installing shadcn on a project or adding new components, Claude 3.5 doesn't have training knowledge as of the cutoff date of when shadcn deprecated their CLI. So basically Claude tends to always use the wrong setup command for shadcn, and it goes into a bit of a loop, and it causes issues for a lot of beginners in particular. So we're just reminding it here that we should always use npx install shadcn, and I'm saying that when you're installing shadcn, and then it's when installing shadcn or adding shadcn components, that's important to be fired. And I don't have any globs in place there because I want that to be universal. And then the last one here is basically a more advanced file that I would use for setting up a new project. So some little tips on prompting. So getting it to work sequentially through instructions seems to work very well some of the times. And then you could do little things like check for things in advance before you run them, or have other kind of tests that you want to run. So you can also just dump in specific code that you need to be run. I tend to try not to do this too often, because the power of using AI or a large language model is that you're giving it autonomy to work on the project. And generally a rule should only be applied or set up when you're trying to correct how it works, or it's not doing something the way that you want to. There's one particular company called CopyCoder. I want to give them a shout out. Now it is a paid service. In no way am I affiliated with these guys. I think it's about 15 euros to use it for a month, but they have a great service where you can take a screenshot of a website and then dump it in, and it will provide kind of an AI build file, something similar to this, which will help you create the start of an XJS project. So I thought that was pretty cool, and they've done some good work on that. So this little build file here, what's happening is it's creating a new next application with all the defaults, but then what happens is when you've got cursor rules in your folder already, it won't let you create a Next.js folder. So it creates a temporary folder that you can copy back, and it will copy it all back into, so you're good to go. One thing that a lot of people fall down on when they're creating new projects is, once you've got Cursor set up and you open a new project and you've created a new project, you need to go to File and you need to open that folder so that Cursor or VS Code or whatever it is can reset itself and set itself up so that it's working with the root of the file tree that you're going to be working with. And the AI needs this to have a context for where it is. If you're a folder structure down or in a different place, it's going to get confused. So always make sure to file and open in the right folder. That's really critical. Okay, and we have a few other commands here, like installing Lucid React icons and some Sonar toast. So this is really basic. You can expand this, take this and grow it, or change it whatever way you want, but I'm just trying to give you the principles of how you can work with rules. So let's give it a go. I'm going to close each one of these down, and then we have basically a fresh folder. We're going to delete our old cursor rules. You were great, we loved you, it's time to go. And he's gone. So to open our AI pane and how we work with AI, we've got this little window over here. Just a reminder, you've got the chat window where you generally have a conversation about your code base and plan your next move. And then in Composer, that's the agent that we talk to when we actually want to get stuff built. we're going to see if this gets invoked. And we have a clean directory here with these files installed. And just so you understand what we're doing here, you can only install Next.js in a clean folder. So because we've got cursor rules in here that I want to invoke, that's not going to work. So this, of course, is just a bit complicated. We could just use a build file. I could just run a couple of commands by typing them in. Arguably, it's a whole lot faster. Really what I'm trying to do here is just give you the idea of how this could be used. What this might work for is, like, let's say the rule is, let's add Prisma to the project. Let's add clerk authentication. Let's add drizzle, whatever it is that you want to add, and you want to do it in a specific way, making sure it's paying attention to specific documents using a particular framework. You could add all those rules in here and have them invoked, if you get what I mean. Okay, so we go over here and I can just use my voice control and say, I want to install Next.js in this directory. Okay, so you see that it's picked up. So you'll see that it's actually picked up on it. I didn't invoke it in any way. It just knew that Next.js was what I was asking about. Even though the dictation got it wrong, the model will get the context. It's giving me a citation of my rule here. It's going to the directory to check if the package JSON is attached, which it is. We've said it is here. And then it said, great, there's no package file, so we can proceed with the installation. So we just hit run command. And you'll see up here, this little temp directory is created. If we just pop that open, we'll see what happens. So I've said no, now we're installing dependencies. So what's happening here is it's pulling down packages from the registry. So basically, if you've ever worked with Python, when you're working with TypeScript or JavaScript, and anything got to do with Node, all these packages that you're used to for pip or anything, they're all stored in the cloud in a registry, and then we can pull them all down. So you can see that's all being created there in the temporary directory. And now it's saying, let's initialize shadcn. And hallelujah, for the first time, it's actually understanding that it needs to use shadcn at latest init instead of using shadcn UI, which is the older version of the client. And if you watch the channel at all, that's something we run into quite a bit. It actually throws a lot of beginners off that are trying to work with Next.js and AI, trying to figure out why isn't it installing these components the right way. So I have a little cursor rule up here now that fixed that problem. So let's run that command. So again, that's the power of a cursor rule. The model has a cutoff date or a context where it doesn't know the right command to use, but we're just reminding it. So I'm going to go with all these defaults here. And now it's saying, finally, let's install Lucid React icons and Sonner Toast. So Lucid React icons are just a way that we can style our project really quickly with some nice visual icons. It always gives that little professional touch. And Sonner Toast is when you have any kind of notification or action that happens in your application, those things pop up. So those are the kind of defaults that I use when I'm starting any Next.js project. It's Sonner Toast, Lucid React, shadcn icons. You don't have to use any of those, but this is just an idea of how you can work a rules file and the syntax around it, and also learning how to get a project set up. So it's saying, great, I've completed the Next.js installation. We've installed all these. Install additional packages. And then remember, in our rules file, I have this little reminder to say, hey, don't forget to commit, because that's something I always do when I'm working with AI. So if I go up here and we look at our project, we've got all these new files that have been added. We had the initial commit that was done automatically, and then we've got all these extra changes that with the new components. So what I normally do is I'll check each one of those and I'll just add them in to be staged to get ready to be committed. And then I can press this little button here and it generates a commit message for me. But I find it sometimes a little bit faster. I can just see there that it just says git add everything. Now you want to be careful because you don't want necessarily, most of the time you do want to add all new files, but sometimes maybe you don't. You don't add in anything specifically important. And you always want to make sure that your .env file is not included via your git ignore. But what I'm just going to do is run this here, and then you'll see that this will take care of the commit for me. We can just hit clear here, and then if I hit npm run dev, I've got myself a new Next.js project. And there you have it. And there you have Next.js fired up on the development server at localhost 3000. So we're good to go. If you go to notes.switchdimension.com, you will find this page here where I'm just going to start dumping in resources as I do my research and I find things useful to other people. I've got a lot more resources in the Switch Dimension community as well if you want to check that out. And there's a course in there, on building with AI. But this stuff is for free here. If we go to Cursor AI Rules, the missing manual, and I basically created this because of some frustration I had myself trying to figure this out, and then the frustration I saw from other people in the community. So I basically dropped in everything I know as of right now about how cursor rules work, everything you've seen here in the presentation, some links to where you can find more cursor rules, and then some examples. And then if I find these are broken or if I need to update them or I'm making any changes, I will. I'll be adding more in all the time. And then also, if you have some good rules, let me know and I'll add them in here, and I'll attribute you. So just let me know who you are, the name of your rule, and then maybe any other kind of messages you have or tips that you have for me that you haven't seen me do in terms of using cursor rules. We're all here to learn as much as possible, as fast as possible. Hopefully that was useful, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.